If you wish to call me a siren, Halogen squirmed uncomfortably. I will continue to call you a client, but I do not like it. Jesus, I sighed. What's with the political correctness? Do you or do you not lure humans in using manipulation and toxin and then eat them? That's what you've been telling me. That is what I am capable of, yes, she fidgeted. Then that's basically a siren, I groaned, exasperated. Why are you making this so difficult? I'm fine with you calling me a client or whatever, no need to get offended. The fan above me rotated slowly, the sickly moon casting haunted shadows across the room, illuminating bodies and pieces of bodies. The entirety of the floor was coated in what I could only assume was a combination of bile, blood, and feces from the corpses lying picked apart in the corner of the room. I wrestled with the cloth binding my hands, not trying to break free, just trying to get a bit more comfortable. That is what you do not understand, she hissed, skin suddenly pulsing gray with banded patterns. I am not fine with being called a siren, and I would think you wouldn't want to be called a client if you knew its meaning. I blinked. Sirens are monsters, she spoke softly, the patterns on her skin flattening into shorter wavelength pulses. And clients are what we refer to as prey. I do not wish to be a monster. Do you wish to be prey, John? A distant gunshot echoed through the night, muffled by the windows of the house. I was in Mr. Munir's house, my 12th grade bio teacher. But by the looks of things, something had since taken up residence in his house, leaving behind a few more bodies than could account for just his family alone. I kinda am, aren't I? I grinned awkwardly, watching her eyes focus harder on me. Prey, that is. If this town is full of your kind, what chance do I really have? I don't see the harm in derogatory terms, or rather, I don't see the benefit of pretending they're not there. You can't stop a word from existing, you can only change its meaning. Her mouth pursed. Say, me, a client, I continued, trying not to flail as I nearly tipped over. Got, in a fist fight with a siren, okay, wait, no, how about I played a game of Monopoly with you and won? What would that mean? Her haunted, dark-ringed eyes narrowed, sharp skin crawling. Prey is defined as the victim of something, right? I nodded at her. Can the winner of something be called a victim? By accepting the name of client and proving its definition otherwise, that's a true victory. If I deny that I'm a client or whatever and win all the same, it's meaningless because clients will continue to be the victims, right? That kind of makes sense, if you don't think about it too hard. I do not believe you would ever have a chance to win, she spoke softly. But yes, naturally what you are saying is true. And you're a siren, I thought aloud slowly. What about that definition bothers you so much? She turned away, adjusting her dress and sighing as she leaned against the bed, sitting on the ground same as me. Your words are not as profound as you think, she breathed. Of course, you can change the definition of a word. In theory, anyone can propose such plans. In practice, however, you, a client, will always lose to me, no matter the activity. You are prey, and you cannot change that characterization because it is what you are. The definition is too strong to be overturned. That is the reality of this situation. So then, You're a siren because it's what you are? I narrowed my eyes. You don't seem to believe that. I do believe it, she hissed, teeth flashing. I have to because it's true. Her face grew redder and redder, eyes becoming glossy. I do not hate the word because its definition is false. I do not wish to be reminded of what I am every time you speak to me. Her eyes refused to meet mine, her rage vibrating her fists against her dress as she looked away. Several seconds of silence ensued, during which I held my tongue. The house groaned. Something scuttled across the bottom floor. Blood continued to drip from the ceiling above us. Alright, Halogen, I spoke, catching her eyes glancing at me. So, one more time. We've been over the plan several times, she stammered, looking at me in disbelief. Do you truly still not understand it? Well, to be honest, I breathed, fighting to itch the back of my neck with my bound hands. I was just kinda hoping there was a bit more to it. There is enough for it to succeed, she affirmed. Your survival is unlikely without more preparation, but you stated you were fine with that, so long as Lily gets out, I sighed. I know, but with or without me dying, I'm not sure that's the biggest problem here. The whole thing seems a bit oversimplified, doesn't it? It will not reinstate the Fear family's dominance, no, Halogen stammered, growing flustered. But it will dissolve this mutinous fraction of Gamergates and their allies. And Gamergates are, I stammered, the fertile siren females, right? Gamergates are independent breeding sources, yes, Halogen hissed. Found only in siren colonies without a queen. In a queen-driven society, only the fertile queen is able to produce offspring. The very existence of Gamergates here is in direct opposition to the Fear family rule. This sub-colony of sirens have been secretly breeding in your town for an amount of time we do not yet know. We can't be sure how much of your population is composed of sirens, but it's clearly a high enough percentage for them to not only feel comfortable taking over your town and killing off the rest of the clients, but to oppose the entirety of the Fear family and its factions as well. Her voice was slowly decaying from Halogen's, fluctuating with uncertainty, fully Assa's by the time she continued. I will not tolerate this, she hissed, such an internal mutiny taking place before any diplomatic preconsiderations. Leads me to believe this group is acting without further political motives. Their selfish and self-destructive victory will result in the annihilation of our entire colony, and potentially their species. Right, I stammered, because historically, only one family, the royal family of the colony, is reproductively viable, meaning very few sirens are born, keeping the population incredibly low and ensuring the species is not discovered, right? With a binding diet of clients, Assa affirmed, a large siren population would spell disaster. There would exist far too many missing persons to attribute to a single human killer. The colony would face starvation, or even worse, exposure. This is why the contemporary situation is so frightening. This siren populace must be crushed before further expansion occurs. And I'm supposed to incite that, I sighed, cringing. Cool. Her form just turned away, coughing lightly as her voice returned to Halogen's. Just one more thing, I spoke slowly, pressing my back against the wall and slowly rising to my feet, watching her eyes follow me. It's kinda assumed at this point, but you are the queen, then, aren't you? That is correct. She exhaled to herself, rising as well. Then, why so adamant about hating your family? I stammered. Everything you've just told me suggests you not only care about the Fear family, you're doing everything you can to protect it. Why did you tell me you didn't want to be associated with them? Why don't you even go by your actual name? A long silence reigned. Halogen glanced behind her into the hallway, adjusting her dress strap and breathing out slowly as she fidgeted with her wrist, fingers brushing the needle tip. Ness is the name of the 14th generation siren born into the Fear family. She finally spoke softly. The first daughter always remains in the family to inherit the throne. All subsequent siren daughters are sent to the subservient city-states where seen fit. Sirens are a rather parasitic species. Technically not a separate species from clients at all, more of genetic anomalies. There exist no males with our genetic makeup, thus making regular clients our only breeding partners. Due to the information difference and chromosomal makeup, however, the genetic probability of a siren and a non-siren having a siren child is close to just 5%. I coughed. All other children will be born as clients, Halogen sighed, and will be immediately slaughtered. So, wait, I gagged. That's right, Halogen sighed, staring up at the ceiling. My twin, Assa, a client, was killed at birth. I have no idea what she looked like, let alone what she may have acted or sounded like. Everything is completely made up. Her slit eyes flashed, her teeth gnashing. I pretend to be her because she's the only one I can go to for help, she spoke. I like to think she would have been smarter than me, more composed and sure of herself. I like to think in a better world, she would have been the one to live. Her fists clenched. Assa wouldn't make mistakes. She bit down. She wouldn't be so scared all the time. She wouldn't have been so foolish. She's not a monster like me. She could have talked to others, made friends, and protected me. She turned back to me slowly, eyes flickering with distant flames. I do not want to be a part of that family of murderers, she spoke softly. But Assa would have had the strength to not run from them. She would have taken up the throne. She would have made the changes no one else could. If I can't stop these cruel practices, then I know she will. If only for her own sake. Protect you, I spoke. So that's why you, acting as Assa, tried to frame me that first day with Yoni. You were trying to protect Halogen from incrimination for the killings, mistakes, I guess. No, she sighed. My reasons were not that shallow, as I've explained. Assa is a personality to aid me, not to be used as an excuse. Your framing would have saved everyone. Injecting Yoni with the toxin and introducing the catalyst 2 days before, I was able to force his alleged suicide in front of you. And I was a moron about it. I couldn't help but grin slightly. You had gloves on the whole time. When you told me to bury the knife, not only did you cement my role in the murder, you also got my prints on the weapon used to kill him. I rubbed the back of my neck awkwardly. I even told you exactly where I hid it. I cringed. You obviously knew where you hid the body. Framing me would have been too easy. You were rather senseless, she breathed, eyes sinking to the floor. But not so much as I. I was unable to frame you in time. My bad, I stammered, laughing slightly, looking towards the bodies littering the space. But, so, the serial killings then, the 4 bodies found, those were all you. I still can't believe it's such a process to just, eat a brain or whatever. What a weirdly specific part of a human to be your only source of nutrition. The fact that anyone can go through all of those steps is unbelievable. You're exaggerating again, Halogen flushed. I hope you do not mess up the plan with such hyperboles. We shall go over it again. Firstly, as I said, we can consume normal meat and other sources of nutrition same as you clients. How do you think I've survived this long? Right, I sighed. You can eat burgers or salads or whatever, but to avoid dementia thingies. I will surpass your lifespan by 150 years, Halogen affirmed. When a client's brain begins to fall into decay after just age 70, mental diseases rendering the smartest of you senile by the end of your lives. How do you expect a siren's brain, largely the same in terms of structure, to function so many extra years with our lifespan? You need a source to maintain neuroelasticity or whatever, I stammered. This is all too a bit sciencey for me, but I kind of follow enough. And you said the purpose of your saliva catalyst and toxin in your needles isn't to cause paranoia. That is merely a byproduct, Halogen spoke. A side effect, I suppose. Right, I nodded. The toxin is meant to denature the protein thingies in our brains. Prions, Halogen corrected. Misfolded cellular proteins that contribute to neurological diseases. Kuru was the example you brought up. Okay, the brain-eating disease, yeah, I nodded. Cannibals can contract it. If you continuously eat client brain matter unaltered, through cannibalism or otherwise, Halogen agreed, you will undoubtedly contract Kuru or a similar neurological prion disease in your lifetime. Humans, animals, and sirens alike are all equally afflicted by this problem. To combat this, however, sirens have evolved to contain a toxin capable of destroying degenerative prions, so we do not ingest them when consuming client brain matter. But the toxin also scrambles the rest of our brain and leaves the entire thing toxic if left unrestrained, I pondered. Which is the purpose of your saliva catalyst, the black stuff. It's actually more of a inhibitor in terms of slowing the reaction. Wrong, Halogen sighed. It is very much a catalyst. The toxin does not begin destroying the brain until the catalyst is introduced, and further injections of more and more catalyst will speed up the reaction. Oh, yes, okay, I cringed, racking my head. Sorry, that's right. And that's why you need to carefully judge how affected the person is when deciding to kiss them again. You could either help the reaction along or take it too far, killing them and leaving their brain inedible, like what happened with Marcus. The catalyst in conjunction with the toxin leaves clients extremely susceptible to outside control, Halogen squirmed uncomfortably at Marcus's name. The ability of our kind to mimic voices is precisely to piggyback off this fact. Mimicking someone the client loves greatly or cares very much about means we can take advantage of their weakened cognitive state and make them do whatever you want. I finished for her. Which is again why you had trouble with Marcus and getting him away from his house. You were mimicking my mother, believing he was in love with her. He fooled all of us, however, and was really just a pedophile interested solely in my sister. Because of this, he was able to see through your disguise, and by the time you realized what was happening and switched to my sister's voice, the toxin had progressed too far. She shook her head. I did not misjudge the amount of time the reaction would take to progress. Okay, you can't simply force a client to accept both the toxin and the catalyst, I corrected myself. Because the toxin has a very specific way of diffusing prions. You can't just, drag someone into your lair, inject them, and then eat them because they would freak out and fuck up the reaction. Stress chemicals introduced by a client's response to adversity will react with the toxin and destroy their brain, yes, Halogen spoke. They must be kept with high levels of dopamine in order to avoid an unanticipated interference with the toxin. Which is yet another reason to mimic a loved one, I continued. You have to keep them happy while the toxin eats away at their brain, otherwise they'll die too soon. That's what happened with Marcus. I wish you would not talk about it with such indifference, Halogen struggled, but that is correct. Sorry, I breathed. I don't mean to. It's just, it finally all makes sense. To think the serial killings getting everyone so worked up were really just your failed victims. The thing people should have been the least afraid of was really just distracting them from the real problem. Our town, the people I think I know, some of them, maybe most of them, are sirens as well. And they're responsible for the rash of missing persons. All those bodies in the warehouse. I hope you now understand why it is I tried to frame you. Halogen nodded softly. The open murder cases were nothing but a hindrance to the authorities. Those few murders needed to be closed so that they could investigate the remaining missing persons, putting pressure on the sirens to stop their activities. I was a fool. I have been so adamant about rejecting what I am that I can't function as a siren. Her eyes danced along the floor. I refused to hunt for myself my entire childhood, she sighed. And as a result, with my mother's sudden assassination, I don't think I can live on my own. Those wasted victims, Marcus and the others, all because I don't know how to properly kill clients. I've brought this mess on myself. All of it. So, how old are you, really? I asked. If you live so much longer, you must age slower, right? I mean, you look about my age, but that can't be true. I am 19 years old, she spoke. Unfortunately, you are incorrect. 19? I gagged. That's just a year older than me, so you do age at the same rate. How do you live over 200 years like that? I will not live that long, she whispered, looking away. That is the average lifespan of a siren, with a regular diet of clients. I breathed out. And you, I stammered. I will likely succumb to dementia the same time as you, John. She glanced out the window. I may even die before you, if I continue my actions. This is the price I pay for pretending to be something I am not. I do not eat clients, and my diet of regular food is slowly killing me. I was fine with this for a while, but after my mother's disappearance, you realized you would have to take up the throne. I continued for her, looking out the window as well and sighing. That's why you suddenly tried to begin eating us, tried to reverse the damage you were doing by eating the same shit we do. A dead queen can't make the changes you want to see, right? That is right, she clenched. But it's likely too late anyway. I have yet to be successful at anything, and the damage I've done is largely irreversible. I am a failure at being a siren, yet too inhuman to pretend I am not. Her eyes remained gazing away into the distance, horizontal slit pupils eating away at gold and blue. She swallowed hard, downing black sludge as it tried to seep from her lips. So, now we're here, I sighed after some time. A lowly client and a shitty siren in a paranoid town tearing itself apart with distrust and fear. We can't trust anyone, knowing that sirens can make anyone and everyone do their bidding with just a little bit of manipulation. In addition, we don't know who among us are sirens, how many of my friends are under their control, and how many of the people in this town, if any, are still innocent. The price to pay for letting them annihilate this town is the potential discovery of your species and worldwide panic, leading to the global genocide of one or both of our species. Halogen said nothing, just glanced away. That's horrifying, I sighed. The ceiling fan continued to rotate slowly, wind gusts battering the walls of the house. Darkness continued to creak from every corner of the structure. Outside, another gunshot rang out, quickly being answered by two more. And a lot to take on alone. I continued after some pause, meeting Halogen's eyes. Her face pulsed with gray, gaze flashing away. I sighed heavily, making a big show of stretching my arms as I laughed. You're a terrible siren, I sighed. Unless this in itself is a brilliant manipulation plan. Her face frowned. But everyone likes an underdog, I laughed. Your plan still seems like it was drawn in crayon, but you have my word I'll help you. Her distrusting eyes narrowed further as they scuttled to look at me. I have only one more question, I continued, worry crossing my face. You mentioned something earlier. Something about pretending. Her head cocked to one side questioningly. If you saw a siren, would you be able to tell the difference between them and a human? I asked, suddenly hearing a sharp crack split through the house. Even if they were hiding it really well. What if they were hiding it for years? Her eyes widened in shock as she whirled around towards the doorway and scuttling began ripping through the house. I watched her begin backing up as a voice rang out from the bottom floor. John? John? It spoke softly, the sound of a metal cleaver being dragged along the wall shrieking up the staircase. Even you wouldn't be able to immediately figure it out, right? I continued to Halogen. Especially if you didn't suspect them at first. Her eyes widened. Halogen, I continued, heart pounding. You didn't tie my sister up nearly well enough, did you?